Dallas Jenkins, excited to have you here as always. And you've had a big week and a half here. The best Christmas pageant ever had a big opening week. What was that like for you, seeing those numbers?
It was a surreal experience. And Billy, you've known me long enough to know that I really have gotten to the point where I don't focus on numbers anymore. I don't have goals. I tell my team we're not making predictions. Our responsibility is 5 loaves and 2 fish. That's why it's the name of our company, 5 and 2 Studios. I really do try hard to focus on that. And you were friends with me back when 7 years ago, when the resurrection of Gavin Stone, we had some hopes, high hopes, and it just totally bombed. And that really changed my life. It got me to the place where I stopped worrying about the results. But I can't argue, of course, that when you're experiencing an opening weekend for a movie that I've been wanting to make for almost 20 years, to finally get to the point and to see it actually exceed expectations, do better than the industry predicted, do better than even the studio hoped for, to get good reviews from the New York Times of all places. When you check on Rotten Tomatoes, I'm sure the audience score will be good because especially my fans and people of faith, they're always going to be encouraging. But so we've got a 98 there, which is lovely. But to get a 90% from the critics, again, you don't, that's not why I do these movies. But to go, okay, maybe there's something here that this message of this movie can get out there, and even kind of get past some of the cynics. It's really been a surreal experience, and one that I'm really grateful for.
Yeah, I mean, clearly the movie is resonating. And I'm not just saying this to you because we're friends and we're sitting here talking, but the reality is this is a film that has the vibes of being a holiday classic, something you come back to every year to watch with your kids. My kids loved it. I loved it. My wife loved it. And I texted you as much. I was like, this is a great movie. I mean, I left it feeling uplifted, but I was also really entertained. And I got to ask you, we're going to get into the whole backstory on how this movie was made, how you got the rights to it. But when you look back years ago to Gavin Stone and you look to this movie, was there any anxiety in you when this came out, knowing that last time you were super excited, you had what happened happen, and thank God it did because it brought you to The Chosen and all these other incredible things. But was there anxiety for you on release with this film?
There was a little bit, I won't lie, but far less than before because God really has changed me in so many ways. I'm not measured anymore by the box office or by awards or anything like that. Of course, the box office is a measure of viewership, and you want people to see it. And for me, it was just like with the Bible. The Best Christmas Pageant Ever is a successful book. It's a book that when I read, I wept and I laughed and cried and was so moved by. And I thought this story must be told. And we'll get into that in a moment. But I just really wanted for others to experience what I experienced. And the message of this movie, of the birth of Jesus, it's a modern story, but it's exploring the birth of Christ through this Christmas pageant. And that notion of what the true meaning of Christmas is. And when you fully understand that, then you want to be the hands and feet of Jesus. And so my anxiety was small when it comes to the specific numbers. But I did want this movie to succeed for Lionsgate, the company that financed it and is distributing it. I did want those who really put a lot of work into this movie and to succeed. But ultimately, I think the success was getting a chance to make the movie that I wanted to make and getting a movie out to the world that is so much about Jesus.
Yeah,
that's just rare for a movie like this, where people are treating it like it's a normal movie, not a church project or a faith-based, in the kind of the genre sense of the word. That there's a normal movie out there that is so much about Jesus. That really excited me.
Yeah, you just brought up something that's really interesting about this project. Obviously, you have faith-based movies that feel very faith-based, and that's great. That's what they should be. This feels different. It feels like a movie, as you were saying, anybody could watch. Why do you think it's important that we have a broad swath of these kinds of movies for the faith audience, that we have movies like this that anybody could watch, whether they're a Christian or not, and maybe the message is going to lead them towards faith? Why do you think that's important to have?
Well, it really is. It's kind of a funny term and a funny question. You and I have actually talked about this privately before, the phrase faith-based. Obviously, The Chosen and The Best Christmas Pageant Ever are probably the most faith-based you can be. I mean, The Chosen is about Jesus. It's literally the story of Jesus. The Best Christmas Pageant Ever is about people experiencing and wrestling with and coming to understand the birth of Christ. The last words of the movie are, "Unto you a child is born." As the movie's ending, Blake Shelton is singing, "Go tell it on the mountain that Jesus Christ is born." But the genre term, the title faith-based, can imply a certain exclusion. It can, it can imply that it's, okay, it's because it's faith-based, it's for people of faith. And sometimes it can mean it's to bring people to faith. And when you do that, I don't believe in watering down the message. I mean, if you watch the best Christmas pageant ever, and I think you can proudly say this, Billy, that there's nothing watered down about it. It's not a hidden message. It's not a subtle message that you're not going to get unless you're really paying attention. I mean, this movie is about Jesus. The story of Christmas is about Jesus, and life change happens when you embrace the story of Jesus. But I think because the writing of the book is so good that this is based on, the story that Barbara Robinson invented, that I am just standing on the shoulders of, is so great. Sometimes things are just so good that everyone appreciates them. When I watched Schindler's List, I didn't think, oh, this movie is so Jewish. This movie isn't for me. It's just about Jewish people. I think when a song, I mean, the song I Can Only Imagine was on mainstream radio.
Yeah,
it's
it blew up.
about going to heaven and meeting God. And it was on mainstream radio just because it was so good and people loved it so much. And so that's what we're seeing with this movie. And I'm not trying to toot my own horn or anything like that. I'm just saying, objectively speaking, as a consumer of media, and as a fan of Christmas movies and a fan of Jesus, of course, maybe that's the wrong term to use, but as a follower of Jesus, to see, on a Rotten Tomatoes website, the positive, overwhelmingly positive reviews, and to also see people talking about Jesus and talking about the message, and even cynical critics saying, I'm not a Christian, but I'm telling you, this movie made me remember what the true meaning of Christmas was and how to live out what this story means. And so I know I'm rambling right now, but I'm so excited.
No, it's all great. It's not rambling because it's great. I mean, it's storytelling though.
Yeah.
Well, and it's story. I mean, you're a really good storyteller, and Jesus was a good storyteller. When you tell a good story, anybody's going to appreciate it because it was told well, right? And I think that's the key here. You've got a great story, and it's not just the book that was great. The film is great, the way it's told. How did you break out of, obviously you're doing The Chosen, you're in the midst of that, and it continues to be incredibly popular, but this is a very different genre. It's a very different, how did you break your mind out of The Chosen enough to be able to get into this the way that you did?
Well, I had to, and I think I had to not only for this movie, but for The Chosen. 4 seasons I'd filmed already. I filmed this in between seasons 4 and 5. And no matter how much I love this project, no matter how much I love the Bible and Jesus and my cast and crew, you can start to take things for granted a little bit. Creatively, it starts to feel like you're in the same world over and over. And so creatively, I did need this break. And especially for something that I love, and especially for something that there is a connective tissue. If you watch The Chosen and you watch this movie, they look and feel very different. But the connective tissue is the removal of those things in between us and the story of Jesus that can keep us from fully grasping it. And that's what The Chosen is about, and that's what the best Christmas pageant ever is about. Now, that said, I did have to break some of my stylistic habits, because the style of a best Christmas pageant ever is the camera's rarely moving, right? I mean, I do handheld on The Chosen. This is very much, I described it as a series of Norman Rockwell paintings come to life. And so we're not moving the camera, shaking the camera much. It's very classic. It's meant to be, you don't know what time period it is. It's meant to evoke nostalgia. And so the style of the look of it, the costumes, everything is extremely different. But the storytelling is the same. And when you're on a set, 12 hours a day and you got to get your work done, the style might be different, but I'm still the same director, and I'm still trying to tell the story of Jesus in a fresh way.
I love that. Well, all right. The story behind how you got the rights to this is a crazy story. When I heard you tell it at ChosenCon, actually, I was like, this is a miracle that this movie ever got made. And it's a miracle for any movie to get made because so much goes into it. But tell us a little bit about this backstory. You read the book, you were super moved by the book. Then you went on a journey. I know it's a long journey, but take us through it because I think it's an important story.
Yeah, thank you. As you know, there's often a difference between a dream, like I have a dream to do this. My dream is to become a singer. My dream is to become whatever it is. And it's hard to tell sometimes, and I'm sure pastors have gotten this question many times. How do I know the difference between that and an actual calling? How do I know the difference between my own desire and God's desire? And I think one of the best tests of that is time. When you first have an idea or what something God puts on your heart, and if it just doesn't let go of you, I think that's one of the signs that it could be a calling from God. And there's others as well. But when I finished reading this book, when my wife brought it home for us to read to our kids, and I was weeping from how moving it was, in spite of the humor, that there was so much humor and wit, and then the gut punch spiritually and emotionally. I just said, I was born to make this movie. It's about kids. It's about troubled kids, which I'm familiar with. I'm an adoptive parent. The Christmas Story, it's my favorite thing. I'm a huge Christmas Story fan. The combination of comedy and drama, which I think is my wheelhouse. Everything about it. I just said, I believe this is a movie that I was born to make. And so 2 things I started doing. One is I started reaching out every year to the rights holders. I found out who they were. I sold them my vision for the movie, my heart for it. They were very moved. And yet they said, well, it's already with another studio and a big time director. And I, at the time, I hadn't done a whole lot of note. And every year I would check in. Every year I would bug them. And every year the answer was the same. Every week in my calendar on my phone and laptop was 3 words: pray for Pageant. Every week it would come up, bing, and remind me. And I would pray that I would hope, I'd love to tell you that I prayed the holy prayer of, whatever God's will is, I'll be happy with. I was praying against this movie being made by anyone else. I was praying that God would let me have it. And I'm being a little lighthearted, but ultimately I really did believe God was putting this on my heart, So long story short, we get to about 5 years ago, and the studio that they'd been working with for almost 15 years just couldn't get it made for various reasons, maybe my prayers. And they got the rights back, and they said, we're now considering a new studio and a new filmmaker. And I'm, sending them videos pleading for the rights to do this movie. And they finally called me up and they said, this new studio is a big time major studio, and we want to, they have their own careers they're trying to build. And so they said, we're going to go with this studio. And I went in and told my wife, and we were so upset, and we had tears in our eyes, and I really felt like it was over. And I went to my computer to sit down and get some work done, and ping, up pops taunting me, pray for Pageant. And
what are the odds? What are the odds?
Yeah, exactly. Well, what I did was, just like I'm right now, I have a computer mouse in front of me. I grabbed the mouse, I moved the cursor up to the delete button, and I was going to delete this prayer prompt because I said, I can't do it anymore. I can't keep getting my hopes up. If this isn't for me, I need to stop, pleading for it. And I went to delete it. And one of the handful of times in my life where I really felt the Holy Spirit pressing on my heart clearly, just don't do that. And I was like, come on, man. And so I wanted to delete it, and God just wouldn't let me. So I said, okay. So I prayed. I was like, okay, but God, if it's your will, I just pray that, you won't get my hopes up like this, and please make it clear, and blah, blah, blah. It was a David in the cave prayer. It was not a prayer of gratitude or of hope. And then my wife walks in and she says, I was just praying and I felt God just laying it on my heart. This isn't over. And I'm like, oh man, again, I don't want to get my hopes up. Right. And then just 3 years ago, I checked in again. I'm like, hey, the guy's name is Darren. He's one of the producers and the rights holders. Said, hey, Darren, just checking in again. It's my time to bug you every year. And he said, give me a call. I was like, ooh, what does that mean? And he says, you know what, Dallas, it's kind of a funny coincidence you reached out, because just last week, the studio forgot to renew the rights. We got them back. They're asking us to renew, but we haven't been happy. They've been taking too long. And just a couple of days ago, my mom reached out to me and said, have you seen this show called The Chosen? And I said, oh, that's funny. The creator of the show is always bugging me to watch it and always bugging me for the rights to this movie. And she says, are you crazy? He's the only one who can make this movie. You better give him the rights. And so he's like, I got to listen to my mom. So let's talk. And so Billy, just being able to tell you that I made a movie called The Best Christmas Pageant Ever, and it's out in theaters right now, is a calling fulfilled, and something that it's pretty surreal to see it finally come to fruition and to get the response that it's gotten.
You know, on a faith note, looking at your journey, having known you sort of throughout this, you have this film that was really well done, that doesn't do well at the box office. That's a big letdown. It leads you into all these other things. You end up doing The Chosen after making this short film for your church, right? It ends up blowing up into The Chosen, which has made history for a variety of reasons. I don't need to tell you this, And then you have this film happen, which is a result of The Chosen. It's all tied together. And I think this is just important for people in life in general, because no matter whether you're a director, no matter what you're doing in life, that God uses the things in our life, brings them together, brings us where we're supposed to be when we trust him. When you reflect on that journey, the entirety of it, not just this film, what goes through your head and your heart?
Well, the word surrender always comes to mind. It's what I did 7 years ago when I was home alone, and I'm just in desperation about the failure of my movie and genuinely not knowing if I'd ever make another movie or show again. And when I came to grips with that, and, a friend that I barely knew and had never met sends me this message of, it's not your job to feed the 5,000, it's only to provide the loaves and fish. And that concept of coming to grips as a person who has always been pretty good at figuring out solutions to problems and understanding results and being results focused, and then coming to the grips with the fact that, okay, my job is just to give these 5 loaves and 2 fish to God. And when I do that, the transaction's over. I really got to that point, and I really embraced it, and I really surrendered. And I said, okay, God, whatever you want. And I was looking for jobs for a year because I was going to resign from my current job at the church that I was at, and the opportunity with The Chosen started to come. And then it took months and months. I was 6 months with no income, no benefits, because things kept getting delayed. And I had my partner who I formed our company with, 5 and 2 Studios. I mean, he was just giving me money for a few months just so I could cover my mortgage and cover my expenses. And my kids were in school and all of this. He's like, well, I don't want you to go work at McDonald's right now because I want you to keep developing the show. And so I think when I think back on that and what our family went through, and that God the whole time was like, oh, I have so much for you, you have no idea about, but now you're ready for it. Because before, I wouldn't have been able to handle this. I would have been seeking the result, the feedback, the reviews, the box office, as opposed to seeking God's heart. And when I changed it, when I truly transformed, when God transformed me, and I started replacing those habits of wanting affirmation. Every time I was tempted to try to get affirmation or be motivated by that, I replace it with Scripture. And over time, my habits changed, and I can truly say I'm thrilled that the Best Christmas Pageant Ever is impacting people, and that you loved it, and that it's getting great reviews and box office. But I genuinely would be okay if it wasn't, because I got a chance to make a movie that honors God, and I'm just grateful that He's given me that opportunity. But it came from surrender, and I think that's true of every revival, whether it's a mass revival like a college revival that we've seen, or a personal revival. It's always preceded by brokenness and surrender.
I love that. Brokenness and surrender. Hard topic shift, because I do want to talk about the casting of this film. I thought the casting was great. The characters are phenomenal. The actors are wonderful. What went into that? There's a lot to consider because each of these characters is very, very unique.
Oh, yeah. Well, and so what my goal was with this movie was, we get literally dozens of movies, of Christmas movies every year now, between Hallmark, Lifetime, Great American Pure Flix, Netflix. I mean, it has become its own cottage industry. And there's nothing wrong with that at all. In fact, there are people who watch every single one of them and they love them all, and that's wonderful. But what I think it has done is it has actually crowded out some of what we used to experience, which is once every couple of years, there would be some sort of Christmas classic that would emerge that you could go see in theaters. And so I think that when you're, pursuing as a viewer, as a consumer of this, hoping for a Christmas classic that can come along and actually have the message of Christ, you want it really does need to feel different from what you normally see. And so I'm giving you a backstory to the casting. I really wanted the casting to ground you, even though I wanted the casting to feel real. I wanted I didn't want it to fall into the classic Christmas cliches. That's a CCC. I didn't mean that, but classic Christmas cliches. I didn't want it to feel cheesy. I didn't want it to feel falsely sentimental. And so you need actors who can understand comedic timing so that it feels witty and not cheesy and not slapsticky. And then that can also handle the emotion that comes at the end. And so that's true for the kids too. It was a very difficult process to find the kids who can pull that off. And so, and that we can give life to each of these characters. So, my wife, who's my co-casting director, along with our casting directors on the films that we do. In this case, we had a great casting process and casting team, and wading through the hundreds of hours of auditions for these kids was difficult. But man, God brought the best kids to us. I mean, it is truly remarkable. It's one of the first things people say. I'm like, my goodness, where did you find these kids? It truly,
they are
truly,
great.
Yeah,
they are great.
And
yeah,
so
they're phenomenal.
They really were.
At the end of the day, you spoke a little bit about this before, but I think it's important to drive this home because when people go to watch this film, when they see it, when they're done, when the curtain is closed and they've had a chance to reflect on it, what do you want them to be thinking and feeling?
Yeah. So when I finished the book, and I'm crying because I was overwhelmed with seeing the true story of the birth of Christ through the eyes of those in poverty and in outsider status. And then there's the last 6 words of the book, which is, "Unto you a child is born." And those are also the last 6 words of the movie. And that's what I want people to walk away from, is twofold. 1, do you truly believe that unto you a child is born? And 2, if you do believe that, what are you going to do about it? What is our response? What is our response to the true story of the Nativity? Hopefully it's that we're going to be the hands and feet of Jesus, that we are going to serve and love the least of these, even people that we wouldn't normally expect to be in our church or normally think could teach us anything. Will we love them and offer redemption the same that we have experienced? And that's what I'm hoping people take away from this film. Unto you a child is born.
All right, so I've got to ask you a more general question about the influence that you have had, that The Chosen has had. I went to Chosen Con. I had not been the year before. So going there, I don't know why I was shocked, because I knew the fan base was huge, but the energy at this, it was like, you were there, you experienced it. A lot of it was directed towards you. It was almost overwhelming in a positive way. 6,000 people who are huge fans of the show, Christians gathered together. What went through your mind and your heart as you were there leading that? Because I thought the entire thing was wild.
Yeah, but to your point, it would be a little bit disconcerting, I think you'd agree, as a visitor, if it was celebrity worship. If it was, oh my gosh, we're just so excited to see Dallas and the cast face to face. We're willing to do anything, and that's just what we're here, and we're just going to celebrate our favorite show and promote our favorite show. I think that would be a little bit odd for a show like this. What I'm grateful for, and what I know of our fans and what makes them so great, is that they are there also. In fact, maybe even more so, to be fed. We had Levi Lusko there, who we always do. Phil Wickham led in worship. Our panel discussions were going deeper. We had Bible roundtables there. We had opportunities to go deeper into this. It was an opportunity to celebrate not only the show, but we always say this, and our fans always agree and say it themselves. This is just a TV show. Ultimately, it is to celebrate and point you towards and put a spotlight on Jesus and the Gospels. And that's what Chosen Con is ultimately about. And so it's surreal, but it's beautiful, because they are there to they want to say thank you. And I hear literally thousands of stories when I'm at Chosen Con of people whose lives were changed. And that's what they want to experience more of. That's what they want to celebrate. And it's what they hope for this show, keeping it free around the world, will continue to happen with others.
Yeah, and I think giving people a chance, there's so much conversation about identity and being part of a group. It was really unique. The K-Love Awards, there's a few places you can go where you have that, and I haven't seen that in many places. And so it was pretty powerful to be a part of that and to see the community come together. Before we go, is there anything you want to tease, you want to talk about? You've got a million things going on coming up that you want people to know in Chosen World, whatever it is. I'll give you the floor.
Oh, well, thank you. Well, right now we're finishing up the editing of The Chosen season 5. I know people are eager for it, but they've got to be reminded it takes longer to make the show than it does to watch it. So you got to give us a little bit of patience. That said, right now, of course, even the Chosen community wants you to go see the best Christmas pageant ever in theaters. But Coming up soon, there's actually, the week of Thanksgiving, there's always what we call Teal Tuesday. So you've heard of Black Friday and Cyber Monday and all of that. Well, we do Teal Tuesday. It's the Tuesday before Thanksgiving, where we have a day-long live stream. And the day before that, we're going to be debuting. I don't even know if I'm supposed to be saying this, but it's you, Billy. So I guess I'll just go ahead and say it. Coming up soon, we are debuting the first teaser trailer for season 5, the week of Thanksgiving, and we'll have Teal Tuesday to celebrate it and to give a bunch of discounts in the gift store. So, and then the first image of season 5 is coming out soon. So a lot to look forward to before the season comes out next year.
Look at that. You're breaking news here. This is good. Look, I appreciate your time. Excited for the film, The Best Christmas Pageant Ever. Get out there and go and see it. Dallas Jenkins, as always, appreciate your time today.
Of course. Thank you, Billy.